I'm a 3D artist, and out of all the games LEGO has made, none of them are horror games. Unfortunately, that ends today because I had the audacity to make my own in world record time, complete with everything you'd expect in a LEGO game. So here's the deal, there's this game Little Nightmares 3, which just launched a couple weeks ago, and they dared me to make a LEGO version of their game before Halloween, plus the video that you're watching, which is not possible, okay? I can't do that. Hey Little Nightmares, I can definitely do that. Challenge accepted. So I popped open Studio and started building the level as fast as possible. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but most LEGO games don't actually have that much LEGO in them. They have some kind of realistic background with Legos on top of it most of the time, but there's a fantastic reason to do it that way. Look at the first level of LEGO Star Wars. Jarvis, how many rooms are there? More than I want to make. You know how you make this hallway in 3D? Whoop, done. Okay, now let's try it in LEGO form. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. This is going to do damage to me psychologically. I ended up blocking out 11 different rooms, which I picked out mostly from the trailer. The level we're recreating is the candy factory because the boss looks like something I would make, let's be real. This isn't the biggest level ever made, but I have to send this to them in a couple weeks. It's not like there's a button you can press to turn it into LEGO. Oh wait, actually there is a button you can press. It's called the Bricker add-on. You just feed it a model and go, hey, brick me up, and it's that easy. It can scale up and down, it can add random colors, you can even keep the base shape and use it as the collision box. Forget all the gameplay stuff, these rooms are emptier than the average YouTuber's house. So to fix that, me and Archie went halfsies on some smaller LEGO builds you can use to decorate the whole thing. We got levers, just like the old games. We got pipes, 5 different types of file cabinets for some reason, generic industrial machinery, paper, books, debris. Ultimately, we ended up with 99 builds in total. I could do this for weeks if it weren't for the deadline and my daily executive functioning collapse, but I can also reuse assets from other videos. The first room is this makeshift campsite inside of a massive vent, so I might as well use the campfire from the Clash of Clans video. For being called Little Nightmares, everything sure is the opposite of little. Seriously, I mean, everything around you is giant. There's really nothing that's little about this situation. You got the sleeping bags, you got the big fan spinning in the background, there's machinery and trash laying around, pipes up and down the whole place, and finally I put this vent cover here to block the exit. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out considering the time I didn't really spend that much of on it, but it's not really a game yet, so if I want to win the challenge, I should probably start making the minifigures. Now that I've made a couple games already, coding a character controller in a couple hours isn't going to kill me or anything. You got walking, jumping, attacking, interacting, but the real work here is getting the minifigures themselves to look right. Little Nightmares 3 has 2 main characters, and it's their game, so I probably shouldn't use the green ninja or something. Here's my design for Alone. She's got the green jumpsuit. In the game, she has this giant wrench, so I found this wrench piece from the Lego Parcheesi board, which doesn't look exactly the same, but maybe nobody will notice. I also gave her this Metroidvania dash attack, so she can go crazy on the parkour sections. Lowe's design, on the other hand, is a bit more difficult. They've got a custom cape, a bow, that's fine, that exists. But then you got this creepy witch doctor mess, which I tried to get as close as possible without stepping out of Lego style too much. Lego obviously doesn't have this hair either, but due to complete luck, I literally just made an iShow Speed minifigure with the exact same hair. Thanks, me. And the bow actually shoots arrows, and there's no cooldown. Whoops. Thankfully, both of their faces are covered, so I don't have to draw them, and compared to the source material, I think I did okay. In the real Lego games, characters usually have different abilities, and Little Nightmares is weirdly similar. You have to use both characters to get through and solve puzzles and whatnot. So I tried making the same kind of system here by switching up the attack patterns. Most Lego games also have a co-op system where 2 players can destroy their friendship fighting over camera control. Luckily, Little Nightmares 3 has online co-op, so we don't have to worry about that, but I do not have the time to make that, so I added character swapping next. You just press control and it swaps the controls between entities. I even managed to find the original sound effect for this on Sounds Resource. In fact, most of the sounds from the game are on here, including some of the best sounds ever recorded. I don't know who's responsible for this, but you're awesome. So you press control, you switch the character, and the off character will actually follow you around if you get too far out of the zone. I should really hurry here, but the lighting looks about as good as it does in the back rooms. So for starters, I replaced all the Lego bricks with beveled Lego bricks, which gets you this awesome edge highlighting. In real life, Lego bricks get constantly bumped around and chewed on, so you'd rarely see perfectly sharp edges anyway. Next, I added this volumetric fog that really adds this gloomy, stuffy vibe, which actually matches the tone pretty pretty well with the actual Candy Factory level. You can even plug in a noise texture to make the density fade in and out randomly like a cloud. This is supposed to be a horror game, so I'm using pretty high contrast. I'm also using a lot of reflection probes to get fancy metal materials. These pipes are looking AAA, no doubt about that. It took a lot of tweaking, but I eventually got everything rendering at a smooth 120 FPS on my big gongo screen with a laptop, so that's how you know it's good. But these guys aren't going to be impressed with a single room, so I started working on the rat vent. Now this room is one of the most computationally advanced rooms in gaming history, with state-of-the-art rat technology crammed into what could be described as a tube. For the lighting on this one, I went with a single spotlight casting down, very dramatic, very fitting to the situation. But the real stars of the show are the rats themselves. I guess technically we need an enemy system for this, but I was smart about designing the characters from before, so I didn't really need to do anything. You just swap out the model, the faction, the health, the hit sound, the death sound, all without even opening the code. The model for this one is pretty simple. I mean, it's literally just a single Lego piece with a tiny hitbox in front of it so he can bite you. I also made it so any entity is controllable, so every time I add a new enemy, I also added a new playable character, just so you're aware. I threw a few of these bad boys in the vent, and that's room 2. It's too easy. Most Lego games' combat system isn't really that complicated compared to some of these games. Usually just involves punching things a lot, but despite all the time I spent, this still doesn't really look like a Lego game, and it's mainly because the UI is missing, everything. Lego UI is pretty iconic. It's changed over the years, but the general idea is still the same. I managed to find the original heart icon from Spriter's Resource, another goated website, so that's like a third of the UI taken care of right there. Most of the Lego games also show your current character as this profile picture thing surrounded by a blue circle for player 1 and a green circle for player 2. People were even using these as their real profile pictures since it was a meme a while ago, and as it turns out, it's not really that hard to replicate the camera and lighting setup to make your own version of this with whatever minifigure you want. So I got that set up in game, and when you switch characters, it even swaps out the picture to whatever the new character's icon is. Both of these characters have 4 hearts, but it's not locked that way. If you give the character 10 hearts, it looks weird, but it will show it. If you get hurt, the missing hearts are slightly transparent, and you can heal yourself by finding these heart pickups, which I modeled to look exactly like the original. The only thing we're missing now is probably the most iconic feature in all Lego games, and that is studs. The fact that you can just beat money out of everything in the entire world is true innovation. In fact, I was able to find the original textures, so I decided to reverse engineer these things to work exactly how they did in the past. I put the textures through a bunch of evil Photoshop surgery to reformat it into a clean line like this, and then do some super basic shader scripting to get it to actually animate and point itself at the camera. The reason the old games are able to have so many of these things on screen at once is because they aren't actually a 3D model, and they're rendered by just drawing a texture and pointing it at the camera. Another thing I realized is that the studs aren't even affected by lighting, since the lighting is just built into the texture. But they do still cast shadows, so it still feels like it's part of the scene. Based on my current ball knowledge, there's 4 different types of studs with different values depending on the color, and I can reuse the same script for all of them and just change the value number depending on the type. We could even make more types. Why not have a red stud hidden under a shelf somewhere worth $100,000 or something? Now all that's left is to put a counter above the hearts showing how many studs you have at the moment. In the real game, the studs actually move from where you pick them up to the counter up top, but I don't feel like doing that, so moving on. There is one pretty big part of the UI that you can't ignore in these games, and that's the true Jedi meter. Basically, it fills up when you collect more studs throughout the level and unlocks a gold brick when you fill it up all the way. When I downloaded the stud images from before, they also had the individual segments of the meter attached, so I recreated the entire system exactly like the original, including a configurable stud count to act as the target for different levels. I even went frame by frame on the unlock animation to figure out exactly how the text pop-up works, what font they use, how many pixels the faded version moves, and replicated that more or less with perfect accuracy. The only real difference is that we're going with true Nightmare instead of true Jedi on this one. It's kind of hard to tell, but it actually balances the scale a bit too, and when it's complete, it starts cycling through this procedural completion animation. With that, the UI is pretty much done, and it's finally starting to look more like an actual Lego game. I also got my friend Louie to cook up some animations for the characters. We got the jump, walk, attack, die. That one's probably my favorite for obvious reasons. So you open the vent using this wrench socket thing, which is basically just a character scanner from the Lego games. Walk into the rat zone, and nothing happens. The camera's still stuck looking at the first room. Lots of camera controllers in games just kind of follow the character around, whether it be first person, third person, whatever. But from what I can tell, these games usually use some kind of scripted camera zone system where the camera changes depending on the room. I was able to recreate that using these 3D areas which point the camera where to go, and it actually moves smoothly to the final orientation. It doesn't just teleport there or anything. Technically, it's more complicated than that, since the zones also affect how much the camera follows the character and on what axis and how strongly, but the basic functionality functionality is actually very simple. The motion itself seems pretty good now, but you can see into the other rooms, which probably shouldn't be possible. Now I could be lazy and just slap some giant dividers in between them. Yeah, let's just go with that. I think it makes it feel more claustrophobic and actually sells the idea that we're in a vent and not floating somewhere in space. So then I got to the next room, and this is where things started to get difficult. I call it the Weevil Pit. It's this giant tall room with ominous red lighting from some invisible light source apparently. In the Little Nightmares trailer, there's these weevil things all over the place that appear to be affected by light. So I whipped out the Lego spider and rammed it into a particle system, and I think it's working as intended because just looking at this makes me feel disgusting. Touching them causes instant death, which drops 20% of your studs on the ground and respawns you at the last safe position. There's a lever that you can pull which causes the big light to turn on, which scares the spiders away so you can climb down, open the door, and leave. I even put a big rotating fan up top so you get this cool shadow casting. But after testing it, the room is like way too simple for the size, so I came up with a new plan, but to do it, we're gonna need to make what are probably the most difficult mechanics so far. Most Lego games are full of a bunch of destructible objects. I remember as a kid, I probably spent 10 hours just tearing this cantina down over and over again. Can you imagine how boring this place would be if it didn't do that? So I made a system where Lego builds can have the same health pools as characters and scatter their own pieces around whenever you hit them. So if it has 1 health, it breaks instantly, or you could make it take a while, you know? You can also give them a stud count to make it blast money all over the place, and it uses the same algorithm as when characters die, so you just pick the number of studs and it figures the rest out. So I crammed these destructible crates all over the level, and it feels much more like a Lego game now. There's just something about property destruction that calls to me. That's probably not good. On the other hand, Lego games also have a lot of buildable objects, which is kind of just the same algorithm but in reverse. As soon as it exists, it scatters the pieces to a target location and then moves them back to their original location when you interact with the pile. I even made the character jitter towards whatever piece they're building next. It feels pretty accurate to how the original game did it. It even does the little bounce at the end with the sound. The pieces themselves jump up and down, and there's that little clicking going on, which telegraphs how you can interact with it. You just choose how many seconds the build should take, and everything else happens automatically. So for the spider pit, I added a bunch of platforms to fill out the space. Alone can jump farther because of the wrench dash technology. So you use Alone to get to the platform, break this crate, which drops a bunch of pieces on the ground, build the pieces into a bridge, switch off to low, climb the bridge, parkour up here, and simply shoot down the cage on the ceiling. I said shoot down, I forgot to make the arrows work. I recoded the arrow shooting so it looks in a cone-like radius in front of you and scans for destructible objects or enemies, and if it finds one, then the arrow will actually home in on it slightly. Right now, that's a little bit more than slightly, gotta tone that one down a notch. Simply shoot down the cage on the ceiling and it drops pieces to build a lever. Build the lever, touch the lever with the E button, and big ceiling light turns on. Now that's feeling more like a real Lego room. But we've got all this space up top that I didn't really use, and that's when I remembered I forgot to make the mini kits. Pretty much every level of every Lego game has 10 mini kits hidden somewhere in there, and when you get them all, it builds you a little thing to look at in the hub world and gives you a gold brick. Honestly, it would be cool if they did more than that, but it's not like mine is going to be better in 2 days, so I won't be complaining at this time. I recreated the model exactly how it appears in the games, and since I already made a bunch of pickups, the rest is pretty much already done. So for the spider pit, I added these fans along the wall you can jump on, and if you can make it to the top, there's a mini kit with your name on. In case you fall down, I made a ladder object that you can climb. In reality, it works more like a particle accelerator, but let's both pretend it works properly for now. I also put one in the off-camera path in the rat vent and on top of the fan in the campsite. This one's kind of hard to see, but I figured out the fan can actually push you up to the top, so I couldn't waste the opportunity. From this point on, pretty much everything is in place, so all I have to do is finish the level and show it to Little Nightmares before the time runs out. This here is the herd crossing ripped directly out of the trailer. These big guys are actually enemies you might get chased down by later, which I made using the Big Fig model Lego likes to use a lot. I don't have too much reference material on this guy, but they have this lumpy shape and they're weirdly cattle-like. I don't know. In the trailer, there's ziplining between the buildings, so I got that going on. That's a bit fast. They do be looking a little shiny for how disgusting they're supposed to be, but that was pretty easy to fix by just putting a dirt layer on top of the apron. The room itself doesn't have any combat or puzzles or anything. It's mainly just there to look cool. There's destructible crates over here in the corner with a secret mini kit room behind it, and the only light source is this big green spotlight, which I tried my best to match with the trailer. Next up is the intake room. This is the first actual room in the factory, so there's candy laying everywhere. We got the reception desk with one of those green lamps that comes in the librarian starter pack. The floor is made of this wood paneling, which is probably too fancy for this environment, but I like how it looks personally. File cabinets and papers and junk all over the place. And finally, the elephant in the room is this big herd guy you have to run past to move forward. How much time we got left? Whew, okay. Factory floor. This one's filled up with machinery, industrial equipment. The main feature is these conveyor belts, which actually push you around. And you may also notice the hydraulic presses positioned in a way that does not comply with workplace safety standards. You can rotate the big one around with this lever in the middle, and there's another lever that drops a battery on your head. Let's see, pad the playtime. Enemies all over the place, dangerous place to be. So what's the goal here? Well, I guess you have to guide the battery across the conveyor belts, timing the rotation to get it over to the battery square without it getting squished or blown up or anything. And if you can successfully do that, the catwalk extends so you can access the control room. There's also this incinerator room with a mini kit if you can turn off the fire. And finally, for the control room, it's this big office with FNAF monitors everywhere based on the trailer. This is where the supervisor lives. Let's see what she looks like. Yep, that's a nice lady. She's in charge of running this factory. In the real level, she appears a lot more and she can travel through pipes like the Mario Brothers. There's not a lot of 6-armed minifigures out there. In fact, I can't find any examples, but just when I thought I was out of luck, who can you always count on in your time of need? Lord Garmadon. He's got this extra 4-arm torso piece, which you can rotate around to get 6 arms. How convenient is that? Thanks, Lord Garmadon. You're all right, man. You're all right. I decided to use the Michael Reeves face for this one since it's the closest to the final result. And after some minor adjustments, it looks close enough to how LEGO would make this, I think. Next, she needs a pen and a clipboard with musings written on it, make the hair taller, and that is one of the most cursed minifigures I think I have ever made. It's beautiful. Greenlit. Get her in the level. I was planning on having a drawn-out stealth sequence with this, but my time was out like yesterday, so as long as you can sneak past one room, you can make your way to the exit and escape the candy factory once and for all. With that, I had to pack it up and send what I made to Little Nightmares. They sponsored this mental gymnastics lesson, so go check out Little Nightmares 3 today using the link below. Unlike this one, it's actually a good game, and even though I didn't get to add everything I wanted, I learned a lot about what it means to make a game fast, even if it means sacrificing certain things, so hopefully they're not disappointed. Wait, we just wanted a Lego set. You didn't have to make a whole game.